You are an ethical manager. Answer true or false. If you answer true, here is an uncomfortable fact. You are probably not. Most of us believe that we are ethical and unbiased, but more than 2 decades of research confirms that. In reality, most of us fall woefully short of our inflated self-perception. We are deluded by the illusion of objectivity, which suggests that even the most well-meaning person unwittingly allows unconscious thoughts and feelings to influence seemingly objective decisions. Let us explore the 4 related sources of unintentional, unethical decision making: implicit forms of prejudice, bias that favors one's own group, conflict of interest, and a tendency to overclaim credit. Implicit prejudice. Early on, we learn to associate things that commonly go together and expect them to inevitably coexist. For instance, thunder and rain, or grey hair and old age. In the mid-1990s, an experimental tool called the Implicit Association Test, or IAT, was developed to study unconscious bias. Using a keyboard, test makers must make split-second good-bad distinctions between words like love, joy, and sorrow, and at the same time sort images of faces that are black or white, young or old, fat or thin, and so on. Subjects who consciously believe that they have no negative feelings towards, say, black Americans or the elderly are nevertheless likely to be slower to associate elderly or black faces with the good words than they are to associate youthful or white faces with good words. Consider Ann Hopkins. Despite logging more billable hours than her peers, bringing in $25 million to the company and earning the praise of all her clients, Ann Hopkins was turned down for her partner and she sued. They had commented that Anne was overcompensated for being a woman and needed a course at charm school. The suggestion to overcome such a bias could be by breaking stereotypes through shadow programs in an organization. For example, to be more acceptable towards women leadership. In-group favoritism. Think about some of the favors you have done in recent years, whether for a friend, a relative, or a colleague. We tend to do more favors for those we know, and those we know tend to be like ourselves, people who share our nationality, social class, etc. Consider the finding that banks in the United States are more likely to deny a mortgage application from a black person than from a white person, even when the applicants are equally qualified. While this may be true of some banks, social psychologist David Messikas argued that in-group favoritism is more likely to be at the root of such discriminatory lending. It is a subtle but crucial distinction. Overclaiming credit. Harvard researchers asked MBA students in study groups to estimate what portion of their group's work each had done. The sum of contribution by all members, of course, must add up to 100%, but they found that the totals for each study group averaged 139%. We tend to overrate our individual contribution to groups, which leads to an overblown sense of entitlement. Think about how employees receive raises. Most of us believe that they rank in the upper half of their peer group, but many necessarily get pay increases that are below the average. This bias can be mitigated within an organization if a culture of 360-degree feedback and a transparency is maintained. This dejection caused by bursting of self-inflated bubble could be handled if bonuses are justified and performance reviews are given at every stage. Conflict of interest. Everyone knows that conflict of interest can lead to unintentionally corrupt behavior. Physicians, for instance, face conflicts of interest when they accept payment for referring patients to clinical trials. While surely most physicians consciously believe that their referrals are the patient's best clinical option, how do they know that the promise of the payment did not skew their decisions? But how can they be objective, unbiased judges under these circumstances? To overcome these biases, traditional ethics training is insufficient and hence simply trying harder won't help. Instead, the methodology should be data-driven, like making use of tools like IAT. Other suggestions could be like giving contribution to others first and then designating level of personal contribution to reduce overclaiming of credit. It is a bit doubtful about how much these methods of vigilance will be adopted and followed by the workforce, since many companies hardly stick to conventional ethics training and tend to win unethical business battles through legal loopholes. It is difficult to gauge the level of vigilance to overcome these implicit biases. Nevertheless, integrating tools like the IAT and other techniques would definitely lead to a better and ethical decision making.